Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, a Pittsburgh Steelers podcast made by fans like you, for fans like you. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. I am your host, Joe Kuzma, sore throat and all. Thank you for the few of you who left me a few well wishes. And I apologize if my voice is a little raspy for today's episode, but I promise we have another solid guest coming on for the first time here at the Steel City Underground podcast. He is one of the founding members of a very prominent Steelers group that spans coast to coast and actually worldwide. Joining me at this time on the Steel City Underground podcast is one of the founding members of one of the largest Steelers, I guess I want to call it communities. It's more or less a movement known as Stiller Gang, and I really have trouble saying this gentleman's, I guess you want to say, code name or something like that. So Bangor, as you're better known, or Steeler G Bangor, how are you doing today?
Hey, not too bad. How about yourself?
You know what? I can't complain, and as I usually say, if I did, no one would listen. So, just to start right out the gate, I'm sure people have seen this whole Stiller Gang thing around, and yes, I am saying Stiller. That is S-T-I-L-L-E-R. We saw the giant banner up in one of the rotundas just this past Thursday for the Steelers home game against the Eagles. They showed you guys right on one of the commercial cuts. I'm not sure if you happen to see that or not. So I'm not sure if you actually got to see any TV replays or anything like that, but your banner's like always on TV. And of course, I sit catty corner in the exact opposite. If you drew a diagonal, I sit in the opposite end zone hoping to throw up a banner myself this year. But you guys are everywhere. Mike Mitchell's wearing a cap, and they have it on the Steelers website, on social media and everything. Tell me a little bit more about Stiller Gang and your following.
Okay, well, the name is derived from Pittsburghese. As you know, in Pittsburgh, we don't say Steelers, we say Stiller. And the original idea for the name came from a book that was written in 1976 called The Steeler Gang, Terry Bradshaw, Franco Harris, and their super teammates. And the idea basically came when I went to my first Steeler game as an adult. And it's going to Heinz Field is a lot different than watching the game on TV. What you get is you see people from all different walks of life, whether they be plumbers or Wall Street bankers and everything in between. And these are people that probably normally wouldn't interact socially. And now that they're in a place where they have a common bond, which is, Pittsburgh football, you see people acting like family. And that feeling is something that I kind of wanted to duplicate around the country. And one thing just led to another. And, here we sit today.
Yeah, so how long ago did you get this Stiller Gang together? It's just a most recent thing, or a few years ago, or?
It was back in, it would be, I think, December 4th, 2011, is when we had the idea, and it started taking shape in early 2012. So it's been about four years and some change, depending on, whether you want to start the actual movement or almost 5 years since the idea started.
Now, in that amount of time, you guys have covered a lot of ground. There, you've got, 45,000 people following you on Facebook. You've started some Twitter accounts and Instagram accounts. Of course, those are taking off as well. We're always seeing the banners everywhere. Like I said, you got players wearing T-shirts and hats. It's got to be a really cool feeling to create something like that in what is relatively short period of time, just this concept idea to concept to what it is now. Do you have official tally on how many members? Or I know you just had a gathering that was out, and it was in California, was it? And you actually had some former Steelers players there. How many people show up for something like that?
About anywhere from 700 to 1,000 people on average. That was the second, actually the third gathering in California this summer. The previous ones had excuse me for a minute here, my brain is freezing. Yancey Thigpen and Ernie Mills. Sorry about that. Yancey Thigpen and Ernie Mills. And then we had Jeff Reed stop by for our latest one in Kuiper. And, it's amazing is that when you go out to California, people don't realize the West Coast has the second biggest Steeler following outside of Pittsburgh. So the amount of fans out there is just mind-blowing.
It is funny that you brought that up because I read an article, and it was one of these terrible articles that I read, and I addressed it a few years ago. There was someone, I want to say it was a Fox Sports article, and there was someone from Arizona, of all places, and they were complaining about all the different transplanted Pittsburgh fans. As we know, Steelers Nation has no boundaries, but I think that's fairly phenomenal that you could get anywhere from 700 to 1,000 people. And you also have these guys like Yancey Thigpen and Ernie Mills. And how cool is it to hang out with Jeff Reed? You just, what's Jeff Reed like? Because you know what? Me and my cousin bumped into him. My cousin actually bumped into him and got a picture at the Hall of Fame last year when Bettis was inducted. And he was just a fun guy just posing for selfies with everyone. What was Jeff like there at your party?
Oh, Jeff was great. He brought his two of his rings with him, so he was taking pictures with everybody there, letting people try his rings on and pose with them. He was only supposed to be there for 2 hours, and he ended up staying for 6 hours playing cornhole and and tug of war and just hanging out and having a good time. He's a pretty cool guy. He's a pretty cool guy. I can honestly say that he had a good time.
That's kind of funny. So what? Jeff Reed, of course, being a former Steelers kicker, for maybe some listeners who aren't aware, I'm always saying kickers are people too. I can imagine Jeff Reed might be fairly competitive in cornhole, but what's he like in tug of war? Like, is he a strong guy, or was he getting manhandled by maybe some of your bigger gang members?
Well, we had there were probably about 20 contestants on each side, so he held his own. He definitely held his own.
Now, of course, SG or Bangor as is your main code name. And the reason we're saying that is I guess it's kind of taken an identity or brand of its own. But there's a few other faces behind this Steeler gang movement. You want to care to tell us a little bit about, I don't know whether you want to call it like a leadership or, every time I think about this group that you guys have, I start to think of like a TV show like Sons of Anarchy. So I know it's kind of funny, but you got the colors, you cover your face when you're tagging areas. And if you haven't seen this, it's hilarious. It's awesome. It's something that I would actually do. These guys will take their banner and they'll enter like the city limits of Cincinnati, and they'll actually put the Steeler gang banner up over like the Cincinnati sign and claim the territory as their own. And you've done that in many areas. So tell us a little bit about some of the founding fathers of this group.
Okay, well, first of all, you have Martin Villarreal, who's located out in San Bernardino, California. As I said, there's a huge following in California, so he's kind of essential for him to be out there. And he's basically my partner. We also have Tony Vinny working with us, Lee Brenzinger, Jeremy Parker, just to name a few guys, Terry Love. And it's just kind of been a collective effort. You even have guys who aren't necessarily involved with our group, like Richard Montesino, but they work so closely with us, with their organizations, that's kind of like it's a situation where we're all working together for the same goal, and it works cohesively. Also, I'd like to give a shout out to the Steel City Mafia. They're the other premier Steeler fan club, and we also definitely interact with them heavily.
Yeah, and I actually saw some of that, and I was trying to catch up with Matt at the first preseason game. I think me and you have a mutual friend in Matt that's from Steelers Nation South, trying to get his group started up there out of Florida, and he was actually catching up with the Steel City Mafia guys at halftime. So, unfortunately, and if any of them are listening from Steel City Mafia, feel free to catch me on Twitter or Facebook or whatever, or hook up with Bangor and just send me a message. I'd love to hear some more about that too. But you were talking about Steeler gang being based in Pittsburgh with branches all over the country, and you actually said as far away as the UK. Now, I did have someone on the show. Yeah, I had one of the Steelers Wire writers, Simon A. Chester, is from the UK, and he was talking about that a little bit. What's it like having some members that are over there from, I guess I would say the Queensland?
Yeah, well, our main guy over there is a gentleman by the name of Andrew Duncan. And Yeah, it's a trip that, in a region that's traditionally into their version of football, soccer, um, that they would be so heavily into the Steelers, and it's not just in London or in Liverpool. It's in Germany, it's in Italy, it's in Australia, it's in Japan, it's all over the world. I can literally say I've never seen a Steeler bar. I mean, I've never seen a bar for another team. As I'm traveling, when you travel through Ohio, you don't see Dallas Cowboy bars. When you travel through Florida, you don't see Buffalo Bills bars. No matter where you go in the world, you see Steeler bars and you see Steeler fans.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember traveling down to South Carolina, I think somewhere around Myrtle Beach or maybe a suburb of Myrtle Beach, and there was a Pittsburgh bar down there. And I was young. I think I was on spring break from college, and that was like when it really first hit me that it is Steelers Nation. And I've seen the same things. And the Cowboys, they try as they might. Like, I have family in Dallas myself, and I'm down in that area. And they even try and, like, they have Dunkin' Donuts cups with, like, the Dallas Cowboys star on it. Jerry Jones tries his best to make that America's team, but I'm sorry, Jerry, there's only one America's team. In fact, it's worldwide. It's global.
It's worldwide.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, it does not surprise me when you say Germany and Japan. Of course, the NFL has had a presence in those countries as well throughout the years. They used to do the old America Bowl for the preseason games. They would play in the Tokyo Dome. And of course, NFL Europe had as many as 4 teams in Germany at one point, which I've heard from others that I've spoken to that, I mean, it's huge. It may even be bigger in Germany than in the UK, the NFL that is. And the Steelers, of course, have a following everywhere you go. The Steeler Gang mission, or as far as like what you sent me here, Banger, it says, it sounds like a mission when I read it. It says, our purpose is to encourage Pittsburgh teams to excellence, spread Yinzer culture, breed unity amongst fellow fans, and give back with our time and efforts to various charities. I did see, I think you had a charity event not too long ago. You have any others planned, or do you want to discuss some of the various things that you have done for charity here in the past?
Well, charity is actually a new thing we're getting into. For this season, it looks like we'll be contacting Charlie Batch. Our main goal is not so much to run charities ourselves, but to funnel people in the right direction. So, for instance, D'Angelo Williams has his breast cancer thing that he's very passionate about, and that's one of our goals this year is to raise money selling pink T-shirts for his foundation. The same thing with Charlie Batch. He has the back to school and he has the Christmas present drive in the wintertime. And then, these are just ways, I feel like if you're ever in a position where you can give back, whether it be your time or your effort or your energy or your money, do it. It'll make you a better person. It definitely won't make you, nobody will ever think less of you for giving. Make the world a better place.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that sounds terrific, and I've seen you involved with some of that. And of course, I mean, that's just it's a really noble cause. If anyone were looking to hook up with the Steeler Gang, let's say, I'm sure you have a presence at every single game, but you definitely have a presence at the Pittsburgh home games. Where can we find you when we travel down to the Burgh?
Oh, you can find us right at the banner on the left-hand rotunda. If you're looking at the Jumbotron screen, we're on the left-hand side. We'll be there every game. And if you contact us on our social media at Steeler Gang, that's on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. We post about our events. Usually we have get-togethers during game day weekends. So the Saturday night beforehand, a lot of people come in from out of town. We like to show people around the city, take them to Carson Street, Mount Washington, the inclines, just things that people need, the Point State Park, stuff like that people need to see when they're in here visiting for the first time.
Is there any...
Pittsburgh is truly a unique city.
Is there anything better than taking someone up maybe one of the inclines to the top of Mount Washington and they get to see that Pittsburgh city skyline for the first time with all the bridges, everything lit up, especially when like Heinz or PNC's lit up? I don't think there's a more beautiful skyline in this country, to be honest.
No, I really don't. I think it's, it's not the biggest, but the way it's designed is gorgeous. It's
Yeah.
gorgeous, and the natural geography just enhances it.
Of course, Bangor, and having your whole presence there in the rotunda and everything else. If anybody ever wants to come by too, and kind of in a little secluded area in back of like Rivers Casino, but I attempt to be at every game and tailgate. There's going to be a few exceptions this year, of course, with the Steelers playing on as many holidays as they are, but I've been flying the Steel City Underground flag there too. So definitely more than welcome. We could hook up one way or the other with one of these various fan groups that are out there. And of course, if you're interested in getting any of the Steeler Gang merchandise, such as the bandanas, and I would say we don't want to encourage any type of, what do you want to say, vandalism or criminal activity, but all in good fun. If you see what these guys do and you want to join in on some of the fun and claim some of these areas now, you did claim Cincinnati. I don't think that even Ohio wants Cincinnati, and being an Ohioan myself, I call that Northern Kentucky. Well, I did call it Northern Kentucky, and someone from Kentucky that was a Steelers fan, and they find me all the time. There's a commenter on Behind the Steel Curtain that I think caught me on Twitter, and he said, don't offend the Kentuckians by trying to say Cincinnati is Northern Kentucky. So we're going to almost have to section it off. Maybe that could be like, just Southern Ohio or something like that, but we don't want it. We don't want Cincinnati, and I try to stay above this. I don't like to do the lowbrow things, but some of the things those people think and say and do as far as the Bengals fans just drives me absolutely crazy. Have you guys had any kind of crazy run-ins with fans in all of your dealings since starting the Steeler Gang?
Well, I tell you what, though, I'll start with on a positive note. Charlotte was a beautiful city to visit, very hospitable. Baltimore, a soccer mom snatched my towel out of my hand and threatened to assault me in the M&T Stadium. So Baltimore was definitely an interesting experience. And fortunately, we made it out of there unscathed, but the fans are pretty hostile. And my partner, Martin, when he went to Cincinnati for the playoff game where they lost, he said it was pretty ugly in there.
Yeah, I imagine. I avoided Cincinnati for that very reason. I could have went. I looked at the weather forecast. I saw cold. I saw rain. I'm usually not a fair weather fan, but, I'd been to Cincinnati several years before, and their fans, you have to force them to show up to the game. Their stadium is about as boring as it can possibly look and be, and that's just a shame because the Great American Ballpark is like right across the street from it down in that riverfront development. They have a very awesome ballpark for the Cincinnati Reds. It is very fan-friendly, even for away fans. The best prices in baseball on everything. It is just set up perfectly for that sport. And right next door, you just have this concrete thing that sometimes their fans show up to it. And, they weren't very ignorant then, but I've seen it getting uglier, of course, as this is maybe turning into a rivalry. I always have a hard time calling it a rivalry because it's just been some violence that has really just made the Pittsburgh Steelers players mad at the Cincinnati Bengals. But then when you have fans throwing trash on everyone, I could see how that may be an unpleasant experience. But when I was there, it was the rookie year for A.J. Green, the rookie year for Andy Dalton. Most of those people there felt that their team was not going to be good anymore. They just got rid of Carson Palmer. They got rid of Chad Ochocinco / Johnson. They got rid of Terrell Owens. They thought they were rebuilding. They thought they were done. So now all of a sudden they've got these huge, I guess you want to say cojones on them, and they act like they're like the kings of the AFC North. So, right. But it does not surprise me that you say that about the towel. I've been to Cleveland many a times. I've mentioned, in case you're not familiar, Banger, my wife is a Cleveland Browns fan. I live equidistant between Cleveland and Pittsburgh. So as you're saying, you see like a Steelers bar somewhere. I had posted some photos of the Permane brothers in the local area here in Youngstown, Ohio, is where I emanate from in this area. And they have two different murals up on the wall. And the one literally has LeBron LeBron James with Myron Cope holding a terrible towel like right over his shoulder. And some people said that was sacrilege. It was blasphemy. They don't understand the dynamic that we have here. And off the air, I was talking about, and I've talked about on the podcast, how I got to enjoy a Penguins Stanley Cup win, and I got to enjoy the Cleveland Cavaliers winning the NBA Finals. And that's because we follow both here. We follow the Pirates and the Indians. We have Pirates and Indians on the other mural at Permanis, along with Ohio State. And it just blows everyone's mind because it's such a diverse area. But when it comes to Browns and Steelers, we're at each other's throats. And when I go to these games, and sometimes my wife will come to Pittsburgh and she's worried, and usually somebody that, talks smack on the woman, they say it, and
right.
they say it and they turn around and you don't know who said it. They're kind of gutless as far as that. So some of the Yinzers and the Jagoffs, to use some Pittsburghese, they just don't have the guts to say something to her wearing her Browns paraphernalia, at least not to her face. Now, if you go up to Cleveland and I'm with her, that towel, I got to put a lock on it because I have seen them grab it and throw it in a urinal. And let me tell you, it started some fist fights. I've seen some Ravens fans get in some fights too at Heinz Field, but usually everybody does things in good fun. It's that 10% of the people who have too much to drink and got to go too far and steal someone's personal effects. I guess is the word I'm looking for.
Yeah, I would have to salute the whole Steeler Nation and say that we're classy. And when other teams come to Heinz Field, there's some good nature. Of course we're going to poke fun at them. That's what, being a fan's about. But it's in good, like you said, it's the very small percent that actually are nasty. And when you go to some of these other cities, you know what? I guess it's because they have a chip on their shoulder and they're so angry at our success, and it comes out in hostility, where we're secure in our position as the world's best team, so we don't feel like we have to overcompensate for our lack of Super Bowl rings.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on
a better fan.
In fact, have you ever used, I don't know if you have an iPhone, but anybody that does, have you ever asked Siri where sadness is? And it shows Cleveland Browns Stadium or First Energy Stadium on the map when you do so.
Wow.
Yeah, at least it used to. And my wife, of course, thinks I'm just messing with her. Oh, no, I can't do that. So she gets her phone and tries it. And she thinks, okay, well, we're sharing like an account. We're on the same phone, but I'm going to try my iPad. And every device we tried from Apple did the same exact thing. Whoever programmed it in there, somebody had poking some fun at the Browns fans. But it actually comes up on the map as the Factory of Sadness if you go to check it in on Facebook. I was in that area just over the weekend, in fact, and I just had to rub it into my fellow family members who are the Browns fans and just show them that once again. It's just too much fun. Unfortunately, I wish that rivalry was... Well, I don't wish it was as lopsided, but I think we feel kind of bad for the Browns and the Browns fans and the torture they've been through. So I guess we're okay if...
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, we're okay if they win in basketball. We just don't want them to win in the NFL because, man, they talk smack. In fact, they're talking a lot of smack right now. This is usually that period of time. It's the preseason. They have a little bit of hope. And then once we get about 3-4 games into the season and they're like 1-3, then that kind of dissipates and then we're back to normal and I don't have to hear them for the rest of the year. So,
oh yeah, that long bomb from RG3 to Terrell Pryor had the whole dog pound foaming at the mouth, swearing that they're gonna they're witnessing the rebirth of the team, but that usually doesn't pan out because you need more than just a quarterback and a receiver to build a team.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? Speaking of which, I guess I'm going to put you on the spot here. We didn't really talk about this, but who do you see? I guess we could pick an offensive and defensive player. Who are your breakout players for this year? You got two guys that you could pick one on each side of the ball. Who do you see making a big impact this year?
Okay, offensively, I'm going to have to go with Marcus Wheaton. Marcus Wheaton had the most yards per catch last year. And if you remember, he had 11 catches in one game when Antonio got shut down?
It was something like that. He had a long stretch. It was against the Seahawks. He had about 200 yards or so receiving.
Right. He's a young talent, and I see a lot of potential in him. And I think that, unfortunately, with the Martavis situation being what it is, that it's opening up. Well, fortunately for other players, it's opening up, chances to get on the field. And I think they're going to utilize it. And I think, I can't even go with one. I got to go with two for offense. I'm sorry. Eli Rogers, too. Eli Rogers, I see something in him.
Yeah, you know what? I just published an article on Eli Rogers. And I was talking about there were two Browns that I compared him to, not Cleveland Browns, but Antonio Brown and Justin Brown. Antonio Brown being a sixth round, well, they were both sixth round draft choices, but Antonio Brown becoming the player that he is. Justin Brown having a lot of promise in a very similar role several years ago where some of the other wide receivers were banged up. They were looking for a guy in the slot. And Justin Brown didn't quite pan out. So it would be if perhaps Eli Rogers is able to assume that role and be a good slot receiver, the Steelers may have found a gem. And I hope he doesn't go the route of, well, the way Justin Brown ended up. He ended up with the Bills. He ended up released. He ended up with the Bills, never made it to another active roster, and is currently out of football. So it's hard to evaluate.
Right.
Hard to evaluate the preseason, hard to evaluate all the training camp reports, and you have your favorites, but it's a very tough league to make it in. So do you have a defensive pick, or did we exhaust both of them on the offense?
Well, defensively, you know what, and that's even harder because there's actually a lot of guys that see with potential. I'm gonna go with the rookies. I'll go with one of the rookies, and I'm gonna say Sean Davis.
Okay, that's
I see
fair
Sean
enough.
Davis. Yeah, he has the eye of the tiger.
Yeah, and he certainly had a better game. He's been improving since the first game where he thought he could just go as a missile and knock people over. This is the NFL. There's some grown men out there, and he shows an awful lot of promise. So, Banger, you know what? It's been great having you on the show. Thank you for taking some time out of your day. Of course, I want to plug all of the merchandise that you can buy with the Steeler Gang logo on it. Want to tell us where you could find all of the great stuff that you guys sell?
Sure. Thank you. Thanks for having me on. It was a pleasure. Our merchandise is available at shopsteelergang.com. That's shopsteelergang.com. We have everything from bandanas and auto decals to T-shirts, hoodies, headwear, and the inventory will only grow as the season progresses and the weather changes. So expect more from us in the upcoming months.
Yeah, definitely. I may have to find like a bandana or something to go along with all the black and gold gear. I am always head to toe. I'm sure you're going to catch me at Heinz Field. We'll meet at one or the other's banner there at some point during the season. Once again, I really appreciate you taking the time out of the day to join us.
Oh, no problem.
Of course, we weren't exactly yinsing, but we are spreading the yinzer culture everywhere, whether that is via Steeler Gang or via the Steel City Underground. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for all of your support. Look forward to talking some more preseason football as we get near the end of this week. Stay tuned for another special episode previewing the Pittsburgh Steelers taking a trip down to the Big Easy. Really, the only time the Steelers, I think, are leaving the Eastern time zone this entire year. Might be, well, close to the longest trip. Maybe Miami's another plane trip for them. Well, who am I kidding? These guys always get to style and profile, as I'd like to say, the old Ric Flair saying, right? But until next time, folks, thank you once again for all of your support. Continue to look over at SteelCityUnderground.com for all of the latest articles, information, and news. Until next time, be safe, be good, and I will catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.